A deadly race. The 1904 St. Louis Summer Olympics should have been remembered for many positive reasons. For one, it was the version of the Olympics to feature the gold, silver, and bronze medals for the first, second, and third place winners. It was also the first Olympic event hosted in the United States. However, the 1904 Summer Games are instead remembered for a very miserable and deadly reason, that being its marathon run from hell. The marathon was notoriously chaotic and controversial. The race was held in the extreme heat and humidity, with poorly maintained roads and only a few water stations, leading to dangerous conditions for the runners. The initial winner, Fred Lors, was later disqualified after it was discovered that he had hitched a ride in a car for part of the race. Despite the fact that he blatantly cheated, it's very hard to blame him. Many other men who competed in the race nearly died, such as William Garcia, who collapsed on the side of the road a staggering 8 miles away from the finish line. While keeled over and slowly dying, the dust from the road slowly coated his esophagus and ripped his stomach lining, causing serious hemorrhaging. If he wasn't seen in the next hour, he easily would have died. The winner of the race was declared to be Thomas Hicks. However, by today's standards, he would not have won, considering he could only complete the race after twice being given a concoction of strychnine and brandy during the end of the race, which would have been considered doping. Hitler's Games. The 1936 Summer Olympics, held in Berlin, Germany, was one of the most memorable games in Olympic history. This was because the Nazi regime, headed by Adolf Hitler, had used this event for propaganda purposes. Hitler viewed the Olympics as an opportunity to promote their ideology of Aryan racial superiority, and he intended to use the games to showcase the strength and discipline of the Aryan race to the rest of the world. The Nazi government invested heavily in the event, which included constructing new sports venues and infrastructure, as well as producing extensive propaganda materials, including the famous film Olympia. The Nazi regime's anti-Semitic and racist policies were in full effect during the time of the Olympics. Jewish athletes in Germany were largely excluded from participating in the games. The Jewish citizens faced severe persecution. The Nazis allowed a single Jewish athlete, Helena Mayer, to compete for Germany as a way to counteract international criticism, but this was largely seen as a token gesture. Leading up to the Olympics, there was significant debate and calls for a boycott of the Games, particularly in the United States and other democratic nations, due to the Nazi regime's human rights abuses and oppressive policies. Ultimately, most countries decided to participate, partly due to assurances from the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, that the Games would be free from political interference. However, this decision was later criticized as a missed opportunity to take a stand against the Nazi regime. One of the most iconic moments of the 1936 Olympics was the performance of African-American athlete Jesse Owens, who won 4 gold medals in track and field events. Owens' success was a powerful rebuttal to Nazi racial ideology. There were reports that Adolf Hitler refused to shake hands with Jesse Owens or acknowledge his victories, although this has been debated. Nonetheless, Owens' triumph became a symbol of defiance against the racism of the Nazi regime. Drag Queen Ceremony. During the opening ceremony in the most recent 2024 Olympic Games hosted by Paris, France, a highly questionable scene took place that appeared to be satirizing the Last Supper of Jesus Christ, but replacing Christ and his disciples with drag queens. Many saw this as an open mockery by the Olympics towards Christians. But defenders of the Olympics, and even the director of the scene himself, Thomas Jolly, argued that this scene was instead a parody of a famous painting depicting the Greek god Dionysus' dinner. Still, Christians pointed out that the drag queen seen in the middle of the open ceremony posted on their Instagram, "Oh yes, the new gay testament," making their intentions clear that this was meant to be a mockery of Christ. This ceremony ritual received major backlash from Christians and non-Christians alike, as many found it unnecessary and distasteful. Imane Khelif. Also during the 2024 Paris Olympics was the controversial win of Algerian boxer Imane Khelif. Imane is a prominent Algerian boxer who has achieved significant success in her career, including winning medals at various international competitions. However, 1 year ago, while competing in the 2023 IBA Women's World Boxing Championships, she advanced to finals and was expected to win, before mysteriously being disqualified from the entire event for an undisclosed reason. This reason was later revealed to be because she suffers from hyperandrogenism, a disease that causes significantly higher testosterone levels in women than usual. Because of this ailment, imane failed to meet the eligible criteria for female competition. So, naturally, 1 year later, when she showed up to compete in the 2024 Olympics, and subsequently won, taking home a gold medal, many people were outraged that she was allowed to compete in the first place, and the general public felt that this was a gross oversight from the Olympics. Imane is currently outraged at the level of scrutiny she's faced, and is currently filing a legal complaint in Paris, France, regarding the online harassment she's received. Japan's humiliation. The 1964 Tokyo Olympics was the first time judo became an official Olympic sport. It was an instant memorable moment in Olympic history, especially for Japan. This is because judo is a traditional Japanese martial art. However, the excitement for the inclusion of the judo competition soon waned after a controversy erupted. This controversy occurred during the final of the men's open category. In the final game, Japan's Akio Kaminaga competed against Dutch's Anton Geesink. Most people assumed Kaminaga would dominate the competition because he was a top Japanese judoka and he was competing in his country's sport and on home turf. People were expecting him to bring in the first Olympic gold in judo for Japan. However, things took an unexpected turn when Geesink defeated Kaminaga by a decisive asatogari, scoring an ippon, which is equivalent to a knockout in boxing. This victory was a severe blow to national pride in Japan and shattered the Japanese dominance in the sport. Black Power. The 1968 Mexico City Olympics has gone down in the history books due to an iconic political statement made by two African-American athletes, Tommie Smith and John Carlos. Smith and Carlos had won gold and bronze medals respectively for the United States in the men's 200-meter competition. However, during the medal ceremony, to celebrate their victory, both men raised their fists in a Black Power salute while the U.S. national anthem played. This historic salute was done as a protest against racial discrimination and inequality in the United States. Both men wore black gloves, and each raised a fist to symbolize Black Power and unity. Although both athletes were expelled from the Games and faced intense backlash in the United States for their actions, the Black Power salute is still regarded as one of the most powerful moments of protest in sports history. Olympic terrorism. The 1972 Munich Olympics is considered one of the darkest moments in sports history. This Olympics is infamous for the murder of Israeli athletes by the terrorist group Black September. This tragic event, known as the Munich Massacre, occurred on September 5th and 6th, 1972. The terrorists had broken into the Olympic Village in the early hours of September 5th, launching an attack on the Israeli team. They quickly kidnapped 11 Israeli athletes and coaches, killing 2 of their captives immediately. Efforts were made by the German authorities to recover the kidnapped Israelis by negotiating with the terrorists. However, this proved difficult because the terrorists had demanded the release of 234 Palestinians and non-Arabs imprisoned in Israel, as well as 2 German terrorists, as the ransom for releasing the kidnapped Israelis. In the end, the Black September terrorists ended up murdering the 9 surviving hostages, shocking the world and causing the German authorities to come under serious criticism. Russian boycott. Historians will forever reminisce on the 1980 Moscow Olympics. This is because the Olympic Games experienced a widespread boycott this year. The boycott, which was led by the United States, emerged as a response to the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in December 1979. The Soviets' military incursion was regarded as a direct violation of international law and a threat to global peace. In an announcement made by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, the United States had decided to boycott the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow unless the Soviet Union withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. However, the Soviet authorities were adamant and refused to put a halt to their military activities in the Arab state. Hence, the United States, alongside other countries like Canada, West Germany, Japan, and China, boycotted the 1980 Olympic Games. This boycott was not met kindly, as you are about to find out. America boycott. The 1984 Los Angeles Olympics was successful in terms of organization and athletic achievement. However, the highlight of this Olympics was the absence of several sporting nations. Led by the Soviet Union, several Eastern Bloc countries boycotted the 1984 Olympics. Most historians agree that this boycott was mainly enacted as a revenge for the United States-led boycott that had taken place 4 years earlier at the Russian Olympics, which disastrously affected the popularity and success of that event. Judge bribery. During the 2002 Salt Lake City Winter Olympics, one of the most insane judging controversies took place. The controversy arose during the pairs figure skating event. The two leading pairs were the Russian team, Elena Bersnaya and Anton Sekerelidze, and the Canadian team, Jamie Salé and David Pelletier. After the final performances, the Russian pair was awarded the gold medal by a narrow margin, despite a visible error in their routine. The Canadian pair, whose performance was widely regarded as flawless, was awarded the silver medal. This decision led to an outcry from fans, commentators, and even other skaters who believed that the Canadians should have won. Marie-Reine Lagonia, the French judge, initially voted in favor of the Russian pair. However, shortly after the event, it was reported that Lagonia had allegedly admitted to being pressured by the French Figure Skating Federation to vote for the Russian pair. The motivation behind this was reportedly part of a deal with the Russian Figure Skating Federation, where the Russians would vote in favor of the French ice dance team in return. Lagonia later recanted her admission, claiming that she had been emotionally manipulated into making the false confession. Nonetheless, the damage was done, and the scandal had already ignited. The International Skating Union, the ISU, launched an investigation, and as a result, both the Russian and Canadian pairs were awarded gold medals in a rare act of correcting the perceived injustice. Lagonia was suspended by the ISU, and the judging system in figure skating was overhauled in response to the scandal. No drug tests. During the 2004 Athens Olympics held in Greece, Greek sprinter Kostas Kanteras and his training partner Katerina Thanu were embroiled in a serious doping scandal. The Greek athletes made the news after it was discovered that they had missed a drug test just 1 day before the opening ceremony. That same day, both were involved in a motorcycle accident, and while that ended up being their excuse for not showing up, many speculated that this was a planned incident. In response, the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, wasted no time in investigating the scandal and soon suspended the Greek athletes. Furthermore, both athletes were stripped of their medals, and this caused serious damage to their reputations as sportsmen. China's Games. The 2022 Winter Olympics held in Beijing, China, was overshadowed by several human rights and political controversies. Observers raised concerns about China's human rights record, especially its treatment of ethnic minorities such as the Uyghurs, and the continual repression of political dissent in Hong Kong. The highlight of the political controversy that plagued the event was the fact that the United States and some other nations had imposed diplomatic boycotts in protest of these issues. Some observers felt that China shouldn't have been allowed to host the Olympics, given the Chinese authorities' policies and actions over the years. The international community had been divided on whether to support or boycott the Games, birthing a series of diplomatic and political debates.